Can everyone hear me? Just put your finger on your nose if you can hear me. Some of you got headphones. All right, great. All right, I'm Nelson Sivalingam. I'm one of the founders and CEO of HowNow. These guys over here. I'm also the author of Learning at Speed. Anyone read Learning at Speed? Oh, great. All right. Yeah, people, I'm going to introduce you to a new book. There's a few people in there. But Learning at Speed is basically a bunch of mental models and frameworks companies can use to accelerate their speed at which they learn. I'm also the host of a podcast series called L&D Disrupt. Anyone listen to L&D Disrupt? All right, there's a few people not long. We basically bring on really disruptive thinkers from L&D and HR. We pick their brain about some of the biggest challenges facing us. Enough about me. I've got a question for you to start with. How many people here know who the person on the right here is? Put your hand up if you know who that is. Okay, you got a few people. This is always a tough one. When you're making a pop culture reference with a multi-generational workforce, you don't know where it's going to land. But this is essentially one of the most iconic figures from films and martial arts. This is Bruce Lee. Do people know Bruce Lee? They just didn't recognize him yet? Bruce Lee? All right, we know who Bruce Lee is. Great. Now, a lot of people know Bruce Lee once he became famous. There's some of you who've watched Enter the Dragon. You love the film. There's other people who, when I showed this photo, thought, is this guy from some meme? Why is he famous? But essentially, he is a global icon. Now, it's very, very unlikely, if you don't know who Bruce Lee is, that you're going to know who the other guy is. Does anyone here know who the other guy is? No one? All right, we've got a couple of people. All right. So this other guy is really important for the story I'm about to tell. Because what you have in the other guy is a guy called Ip Man. Now, before Ip Man came into the picture, Bruce Lee was fast, fierce, but very uncontrollable. He wasn't this skilled master that he went on to become. When he met Ip Man was the teacher that he needed. And what Ip Man did was he adapted. He didn't give him a curriculum and say, Bruce Lee, this is what you need to go study. He adapted what he needed to know based on Bruce Lee's style. Whenever Bruce Lee's stance was off, he didn't say, watch a video. Instead, he corrected him. He gave him instant feedback to get him back on track. He would constantly challenge him and push him and reinforce those fundamentals that he needed to become the master he did. Now, some would argue if it wasn't for Ip Man, we wouldn't have Bruce Lee. Right. I would argue if someone had told Bruce Lee to watch a YouTube video or read a book, we probably definitely wouldn't have a Bruce Lee. Now, if you look through history, there are many, many examples of great teachers who changed the direction someone was going in. From Plato finding Socrates to Serena Williams having her father, there are so many different examples of how great teachers have shaped great learners. We don't even have to go through history. Let me give you my own story. This early 20s, almost 15 odd years, I know some of you are sitting there going, you look exactly the same, you haven't aged one bit, I know. But this is when I was starting my first tech startup. And I didn't have a clue about what you do and how you raise money. All you'd read is these headlines around people raising millions, but I had no idea. To the point where someone told me to go film a video on the top of a skyscraper, and I did crazy things like that. So what do you do when you're from a working class household, you don't know anyone who's ever started a business, let alone raise money? You go to Google and you search, how do you raise money? And go do that today. Search how to raise money. And you'll find the most frequent thing you'll see is the first bit of money you raise from your friends and family. Now, I don't know about you, but if I ask my friends and family for £1 million to put into a business, I know what I'll get back. So this is what you find is a lot of generic content, quite often written by content interns masking as experts. Now, if this is all I had, I probably never would have been able to raise money and start a business. But at that point, I found this person who became a mentor. Now, what you often find is great teachers don't often have the label that they're a great teacher. But what this mentor did is, apart from generously giving up their time, they understood my context. They understood what I knew and what I didn't know. And they adapted what they told me based on my needs. They created a safe space for me to practice pitching. And they would give me instant feedback to correct where I needed to go. They would challenge me. And they would give me just enough information I needed to go from learning to doing. And that's a big step. Content can tell you what to do, but it's a great teacher who can give you the confidence to go from learning to doing. Now, we know this. We know the power of great teachers because I'm sure many of you, like I just shared my experience, I'm pretty sure many of you will have your own experiences of teachers who've shaped your life. Much like that example shaped and arguably changed the direction of my life because of that coaching. But when you look at what we've been doing in workplace learning, it kind of tells us where our biggest problem is. We know great teaching is effective. And so we've tried to scale it. But the reality is we've ended up scaling content. Let's look at a timeline of what's been happening in L&D. And this goes to show that we've got the right intentions. We've got the right intentions, but actually we've ended up scaling the thing we didn't plan to scale. So if we go as far back as the 90s, you've got your LMSs and e-learning courses. Now this was really good at scaling access to content. But what we can all probably agree on is they weren't as effective at scaling learning. So you could store it, you could have it online, people can find it. It was great because it was self-paced and it was easy for people to do it at their own speed. But what it didn't have, it didn't give me feedback. It didn't understand my context. It couldn't tell the difference between you or you. It didn't know my business. And so it couldn't bring in that level of feedback and context that you would get from great teaching. Then we gradually improved on that. What we started to see is more role-based learning. You're a new manager, here's a pathway. You just joined the sales team, here's a pathway. Now this was slightly better because it was a bit more relevant than your kind of one-size-fits-all static learning. But what it lacked was, it was still passive. I could click, 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 like a lot of people do. That doesn't mean I'm learning anything. I can't do that when I'm having a one-to-one conversation with a teacher. I can't sit there passively. It's active learning, I'm engaged. We couldn't meet that requirement. And then someone somewhere thought, I know what the problem is. These courses are too damn long. And so we started seeing micro-learning and bite-size. Now this was great because it was easy engagement. We made content convenient, but it didn't have the depth that was required for complex skill building. And it still didn't bring my context into the picture. But now on a completely different track, you've got coaching and mentoring. Now coaching and mentoring is really powerful because it does understand my context. You're able to, within a coaching and mentoring setup, you're able to personalize on that one-to-one level. But there's a problem with coaching and mentoring. It's so bloody expensive and difficult to scale. So what we did was, the thing that was too difficult to scale, we left it to the very elite leadership who can afford it, And what we did instead is we scaled the thing that was easier for us to scale. So in essence, what we ended up doing is we gave Bruce Lee a course, or rather a playlist of course, and we called it development, and we hoped Bruce Lee would become Bruce Lee. We gave Bruce Lee courses with no feedback and no context. We didn't guide Bruce Lee with effective practice. We didn't adapt to Bruce Lee's needs. And so essentially what happened is we lost Bruce Lee. Now, what I want you to think about is how many Bruce Lees, and I don't mean martial arts experts in your company, but how many people like that are in your organization who are not getting that right type of teaching experience, and therefore we never actually realize their full potential. So this isn't just about, oh, this is a nice to have. This is a real consequence to your organization, but also to the broader society. If we've got people who've got that level of potential who are not able to realize it because they don't get access to great teaching. So why is it so hard? Now, to do this, we've got to break down, what is it? What are the core components of great teaching that we're unable to scale? And they come into three things. And that's where what you find in great teachers is they're able to connect content to your context, but in a very engaging conversation, in a two-way dialogue where we're interacting with each other. Now, let's bring that into a beautiful Venn diagram, because who doesn't love a Venn diagram? It's amazing how far these three circles go. But the first circle is content. So that content is, what do I need to know? So this is your core knowledge, your core frameworks, your models, your techniques. This is the raw underlying material someone needs in order to be able to learn. Then what you have is context. So what do I mean by that? Content is great, but what great teachers do is they tell you why that content matters to you. What they're able to do is make it relevant to your role. They're able to make it relevant to your skills gaps, your company's culture, your company's challenges. What they're able to do is take the same concept that you can get everywhere, but adapt it to exactly what the needs are and demands are of your context. And then you have conversation. Now, the greatest teachers don't broadcast like what I'm doing. The greatest teachers have that one-to-one interaction and engagement. What they're able to do is take those concepts, those models and frameworks, personalize it in a way which you can internalize. They adjust it in real time. And they work with you to co-create that meaning. They tell you how to make sense of this. Now, let's look at what happens when you don't have all three of these things coming together. Now, when you only have content and context, what you end up with, you've got the right content for the right person. So it might be you've got a course and you've managed to find the person who really needed that course. But that still doesn't change the fact that is you've got relevant learning, but it's still passive. It's not adapting to my needs. It's not giving me feedback based on my context. And so that's what you lose out on when you have content and context. Now, that's where a lot of learning platforms can do that. They can deliver relevant learning to you in the context, but that doesn't mean you're actively learning something. Now, let's look at if you only had context and conversation. Now, what you've got here is, this is what coaching typically does. It's giving you the guidance, but without any real content, without the depth of expertise to take it there. That's why you often find good coaches ask you questions and they point you in the right direction, but they're not necessarily an expert in your field to go deep and give you the answers that you might need or to guide you there. So that's the gap that you have when you've got context and conversation. And then you've got the last one, which is where you've got content and conversation. Now, the best example of this is your kind of one-to-one tutoring and teaching. Now, this is where they've got the expertise to discuss the material. They're doing it in an engaging way. but they don't have the context to make it land. Now, a great example of this is actually school education. Now, I want to know how many people have used algebra in their day-to-day work? One, but two people. Three. I'm glad school worked out for you there. Because the reality is, school and traditional education, we often learn things where we're not in the context to be able to apply the thing we've learned. And quite often it might be many years later or never before we do it. So that's why tutoring is great, engaging way for us to actively learn. And I'm sure we all learn algebra to be able to take our exams, but that doesn't mean we were able to apply it in a context in a meaningful way. Really? So that leaves me with my beautiful Venn diagram, which I've decided to call the 3 C's of capability building, because when you nail it and you get all 3 of these things to come together, what you get is you're building capability. You're helping people get the knowledge, the skills they need to be able to do their job really well. Now, when you bring these 3 things together, now for anyone who's read my book, Learning at Speed, you'll see I have a chapter on talking about the learning flywheel. But what the learning flywheel brings together is 2 loops. One is the learner's loop, which is the learning experience loop. And the loop over here is the learning experience design loop. So this is typically the loop that you as L&D or you as a learning experience designer will go through. Now, when you have those 3 components of great teaching come together, it makes it easier to go through this flywheel with a lot of momentum. You find people will be able to learn that knowledge, concepts, and frameworks. They're in an interaction where they can practice it and immediately get feedback. But what's really good here is the feedback has 2 meanings. One is the feedback you give the learner. The other one is the feedback the learner gives the teacher. Now that's really important, because when the feedback comes back to the teacher is then able to ideate and build and test a learning experience. That's when I go, okay, it doesn't seem like what I said here is helping this person. So I'm going to slightly say it in a different way. That's the feedback loop that creates a new learning experience to drive that learning loop. Now the problem is, when you're going through this manually, it's hard to scale. But without doing this, you can't build momentum in the learning flywheel. So where are we going with this? We really, really wanted to solve this problem. And we were trying to think, how can we do this? How can we not scale content and instead scale great teaching? And this is where technology was progressing, and we had AI agents that came into the picture. Now, up until about 18 months ago, the most famous agent you would have known was called Bond and was 007. But now the most famous agent you have is AI agents. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with the idea of AI agents, quite simply, we're talking about prior to AI agents, you would have had to tell AI one by one each task. Say, to get something done, there are 5 steps. I would have to tell AI to do step 1, then it'll come back to me. Then I have to say step 2. And so it would take a lot of effort from your side. But with AI agents, what you have is AI that can make decisions and figure out what all of the steps are to get to your outcome. So you no longer need to break down all the steps and tell it, this is what step 1 is, this is what step 2 is. It can figure that out. All you need is the start and the outcome that we need to get to. Now, we really wanted to solve this problem, and we thought AI agents gave us an opportunity to scale teaching in a way that wasn't possible before. So we started researching and experimenting to see what we could do. So I'm going to show you what we found. So to be able to scale great teaching, we needed an AI agent that understands you. Going back to that building block I mentioned around context. So what we ended up doing was we built an AI agent that knows your role, of course, but it can break down your role into tasks and behaviors. So what are the tasks and behaviors that you need to be able to do? And then it can break down from there, what skill and proficiency level do you need to have in order to be able to do those tasks? And what it's able to then do is interact with you to assess where you are in that skill proficiency level. So what it's doing, like any great teacher, is understanding your context. What do you do? What do you need to know? What don't you know? And what gaps do we need to bridge? So that was the starting point for giving an AI agent your context so it can start to be a great teacher. Then we needed an AI agent that knows this context and it could challenge you. It can ask you the tough questions. But more than that, it could create a safe space for you to practice. So what we ended up doing was we built an AI agent. It knows what you do for a job. It knows what your day-to-day looks like. It's able to create scenes that you can pick from, dive into an immersive simulation where you start to practice this. But what's really incredible is the AI agent is able to coach you through that entire experience. You have to start and finish as you're going through that experience of practice. It will nudge you. It will reinforce ideas. It will ask you reflective questions that are going to help you get the most out of this practice scenario. But that's no good if it can't give you instant feedback. So what the AI agent is able to do is analyze what you've done. And based on its knowledge base, based on the organization's knowledge, based on the world's knowledge, what it's able to do is tell you what you did well, but also help you reflect on what you could do better. The feedback is so incredible that I can upload a call of a one-to-one that I had with a direct report. It would be able to analyze that and give me constructive feedback around what I could have done better. Most importantly, what you only get through a conversational learning experience in such a dynamic way is it adapts to you. So you can ask this AI agent a question. It will answer. But what it does very cleverly is it will highlight concepts and topics within that answer which it thinks that you don't really know about. And so when it hyperlinks it, all you need to do is click on that concept and it will automatically generate a tailored response just for you to help you understand that concept and topic. In the same way, if I was interacting with a teacher and I said to a teacher, you just said this, but I don't know what this means. A teacher would be able to stop and go, okay, let me tell you a bit more about this. That's what great teachers do. And that's what this AI agent can do. The other important one, quite often great teachers have great memory. They remember what you know, what you don't know. They remember your context. And at the right moment, they'll reinforce you to keep making sure you're getting better at the thing that you need to get better at. What's incredible is these AI agents also have memory. They can remember. They can remember you've been practicing how to have a good one-to-one with your direct report. And then it can proactively nudge you to say, look, do you want to do a quick practice scenario, or do you want to do a quick knowledge check before you have that one-to-one with your direct report? That's what AI agents can do. Now, all of what I've shown you is the surface of what can happen, but all of this is happening in one seamless conversation, which we all know how to do. And it's able to bring that great teaching at scale, on demand, in the flow of work. Now, this new kind of teacher, we're calling it HowNow Guru. And we think it changes the paradigm. And we're not here because we're excited about something new we've built. We're excited because we think this is a genuine breakthrough in how we're going to learn in our organizations. Because it introduces a new kind of teacher where it's a lot less Netflix for learning and a lot more what I'm calling like a personal trainer for your brain. It's like a PT. who can interact, engage, challenge, adapt to you. And that's what we think learning at work will look like and needs to look like. Now, with a lot of these things, you got to try it to believe it. And you can. So we're just over here at J35. If you just want to play around with it, geek out about the technology that's driving this, we're more than happy to geek out with you. I hope that's been useful. Thank you for your time.